Louisiana schools don't mandate that comprehensive, evidence-based sex education be taught, right? So these, materials and these videos, they would be presented without any sort of other context. This is
Yes.
about shaping culture. It's about like targeting kids. It's about indoctrinating like the next generation and manipulating their feelings about abortion. And
Yes.
like to do that through the public school curriculum is just, it's fucking insane to me.
Yes.
Welcome to Seriously, the podcast that dives into the baffling,
We can't send them to a prison where there's animals, where there's livestock.
the ridiculous,
Like omelet's better than sex.
and downright unbelievable political climate in red states like Louisiana.
So we can't go there. There's no vegan jail.
Seriously. Seriously.
Welcome to Seriously. We're your hosts. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Ellie.
This week, we are going to talk about some things that have been going on at the legislature. It's been a little bit slow, but it's going to start picking up, I think, next week. But before that, I don't have a specific Seriously. I have like a topic I want to dive into that is not Louisiana specific, but has implications. But if you have a Seriously, Ellie, love to hear it.
It's more of like a lament.
Okay.
So I was thinking about, as folks know, I'm not religious like at all, but today is Palm Sunday. And it brings back a lot of like good memories from childhood. Like when I was little, like pretty little, then I was raised Catholic. And Palm Sunday is like, so it's the Sunday before Easter, and it's like just kind of a fun day. So like for Lent, leading up to Lent, then one of the things people do is like collecting money for the poor. And at my house, my dad would like hide coins around the house. We would do like a scavenger hunt like for weeks before with like finding coins around. So it was like Easter hunt-y. So that was kind of like a tradition specific to my house. But you would then like do the scavenger hunt every weekend, collect the coins to then take to church on Palm Sunday to donate to the poor. And then Palm Sunday itself, then when you're at church, there's all these dried palms. You get these palms and you make them into crosses. So it's like a bunch of kind of fun stuff as a kid, which the lament is that we need more like sort of fun traditions and activities that are secular, that are non-religious. And, because like that stuff is like, it's good tradition building in families, the stuff to look forward to. I mean, a lot of holidays either that were originally religious or are like religious adjacent, like Halloween or
Mardi Gras.
Yes, Mardi Gras, Halloween, Valentine's Day, Christmas, actually for me, is basically sort of a lot of secular traditions. But I would like, when I have time, I'll start working on this. So, that will be never. But if other folks have ideas, maybe they can send them to us. I think it would be nice to sort of like, try to think through some ideas of things that we as non-religious people could do with friends and or children to sort of, mark the passage of time and mark the seasons and, instill values like giving to the poor. So that's my Seriously lament / to do project for listeners and, for myself scheduled for
I like that.
no time ever, but yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. I also really love the idea of taking something that is kind of, a religious holiday and repurposing it. My friend Jordan and I would do these, we called them Gentile Seders every year for Passover. And we would invite a bunch of people over. Jordan was like an excellent cook, so she would make a delicious Passover meal. And we together wrote like an environmental / social justice Haggadah, which like kind of tells the story of Passover. And so it wasn't so traditional in, really kind of going through like the story of Exodus, but using the framework of that story to tell the story of people kind of coming out of oppression and fighting back. And I loved it. It was so much fun. And also you would get really wasted because we were very strict about following the rules during the Haggadah. It like directs you, now you drink, some of your wine and now you finished a glass of wine. And yeah, it was a raucous time.
I love that. Well, Passover has always been one of my favorite like holidays that I obviously didn't grow up celebrating, but have occasionally been invited to. And I love all the stuff with like Elijah. I love making like a good Elijah joke every once in a while. So yeah, it's just stuff like that. In Latvia, then also everywhere in Northern Europe, the summer solstice is a huge deal. And I mean, it's done in that part of the world on a large scale. Obviously, the time of the year where it's light almost all of the night. There's hardly any darkness at all. You go out to the countryside, build bonfires. People jump over the bonfires, do all sorts of like outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's not that light here, but that's all. That's one to put a pin in. Summer solstice is like, and it goes back, way, way, way before Christianity to pagan times. So that could be some inspiration for people looking back to pagan traditions that can be repurposed for modern life.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And then the Christians will freak out and
That's fine. Yeah,
yeah,
right. Because their traditions are the only ones that count. Yeah.
right. Exactly. Okay. Well, this is what I wanted to talk about. We have not talked about this, and I think it's important. There's been a lot of coverage of it recently, so it's sort of current. But there is this thing called the SAVE Act. So that is short for the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. And this is Trump's like federal bill that would nationalize voter registration requirements. And I think so. I mean, at the core, what they want to do is to require people to prove U.S. citizenship with official documentation, not just to vote, but when they're registering to vote in federal
But I think
elections.
it's both.
Yeah,
Also, like at the polls, right? So,
right.
like
It's both.
needing to find and or obtain like a birth certificate or passport or whatever, and then needing it, twice.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's both. So there's just so much that is problematic about this. And I think that a lot of people think, like, well, sure, you should have to show who you are to vote. It's one of these things that seems like a very reasonable policy, but
hmm
the actual application of it would be so extremely difficult that it would disenfranchise a bunch of people. And
Yeah. And that's true with voter ID in general. I'm sure most
yes,
of our listeners will know. I mean, there's voter ID in Louisiana. I mean, I have to show my license to vote here. That's not true in Kentucky, or at least it wasn't when I was growing up there. So, I mean, it differs by state. A lot of those laws have been challenged, over the years in various states. But this is also like just my regular driver's license would not be sufficient. I don't think a real ID is enough. Like,
nope.
again, it has to be like, it's not proving your identity. Is a document sufficient to prove your
Citizenship.
citizenship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real IDs, most state issued IDs don't demonstrate proof of citizenship. That's not a requirement. And this would apply to like new voter registrations going forward. And also if you're just updating your voter registration. So you move and you need to change your address for where to register to vote, or if you change your name. Another thing I think that the SAVE Act is doing is like directing states to purge their voter rolls. And
hmm
the Trump administration has been requesting and or bullying in some situations states, send us your voter rolls so we can go through them and make sure that there are no non-citizens that are
Yeah. And I
registered.
mean, when you say bullying, like that includes in Georgia that they sent FBI agents there and Tulsi Gabbard, who is national security head or whatever she's actually doing, who the fuck knows. But like that is very concerning to me, that
Yeah,
there's like an effort underway to make it seem like not just what we're talking about with purging and government IDs, but also like proof of citizenship, but like attempts to make it seem like or to, start propagandizing about foreign interference, basically.
right.
And then also, towards the end with everything going on in Minneapolis and in Minnesota, there was like a weird period where the federal government was negotiating with the state government that they would have ICE like leave if Minnesota turned over their voter rolls.
Yeah.
they really want that information. And it is like, why? It is a really good question. Particularly, obviously, as we should say at this point, and I'm sure this is obvious to most people listening, there's virtually no evidence in the United States of voter fraud. Like it's like so rare. And then even less so is there evidence of any sort of not just widespread, but even just like regular incidents of people who are not citizens attempting to vote.
Right. Yeah. I think there've been like a handful of cases where someone who is here legally because they have some sort of temporary protected status or, whatever, and they're just kind of confused
Yeah.
about it and they think maybe they can vote. So they
Which that
register.
Yeah, that's the same like with years ago, people might remember in Florida, then when they changed the rules in Florida on people who had been convicted of felonies being able to vote, then there were a couple, I mean, again, like a handful of people who like were confused about the rules, like that, how long you had to wait, or, did it matter, like exactly what the parameters were. And so tried to register, and then fucking DeSantis did a bunch of like perp walking 5 people, out of their
Right.
homes to arrest them, which I don't really know what happened with that, but it was all just it was just the same as this, like just a big show that, it involves like a handful of people, and that's a handful of people with all these things that are over like decades,
Right.
not like even like per election. And usually there's no evidence of like intent, so there's not really a problem to be solved. I think that like anybody who's being objective about this would say that based on
Yeah.
the research, but the stuff that they're trying to do would create a lot of potential barriers, bureaucracy, and room for a lot of error on the government's part when you talk about purging people. Like what the parameters of that are is always really tough. And I don't know if the bill lays that out or if it's left to the states, but like it's usually basically like how long it's been since a person has voted. So maybe reason to believe that they've moved or they've died or whatever. But inevitably states have rules in place where they do that. They have their own processes. But if you're doing it, if it's willy-nilly criteria, that's going to be a problem. And B, if it's like really strict criteria, then inevitably there's going to be people that just, for whatever reason, they haven't voted in 6 years, but like they want to vote in this election, and
Right.
then they show up and they've been purged from the voter rolls. And then whether you have to notify people about that, that's an issue. How you notify them, all of those kinds of things, again, are things that the states are doing, and they're doing it however they do it. And some are doing it better than others. But like, those things need to be done really carefully and like intentionally, and not with whatever sort of federal mandate from an administration that is clearly trying to make it harder for people to vote.
Yeah. Including anyone who's changed their name like after
Yeah.
they were born. So the bill would require voters who don't have a passport with their same name to present a birth certificate that matches the name on their real ID or driver's license. So that's one thing. But my birth certificate name is Michelle Denny because I
Right.
changed my name when I got married,
Yeah.
as have millions and millions
Yes.
of other women.
Yes. Whether it's intended to disenfranchise women or it will just have a disproportionate effect on women. And as we know, this is in the context of some religious organizations that, like Pete Hegseth and other motherfuckers around there, think that women shouldn't be voting, and that married women in particular shouldn't be voting. So
That's right.
maybe it's intentional. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's even harder then, in other words, if as an adult you have changed your name. It's never going to match your birth certificate then. So do you have a passport? Do you have a social security? Did you get it changed with social security? Also, can you get your social security card? I had to try for some reason years ago, and I never did change my name, but I needed my social security card. I never got it. It was like a fucking nightmare. Like it was just an absolute nightmare of like the information you have to remember about yourself was too hard. It was like, like every address. I mean, it's meant to, prevent fraud, and I get
Right.
that. But like whatever I thought I needed my social security card for, I realized at some point that I could figure out another way to get that thing done because it was just way too hard.
It's like the name of the hospital where you were born. I
Yeah.
mean, that's
Which I
ridiculous.
know
Anyway,
that, but like that's yeah, again, but yes,
I
like
don't. I mean, I know the county that I was born in
this was like
Maryland.
was just every address, where it's like, did
Oh,
you live
right.
at this address? And I'm like, yes. And then I'm like, oh, but wait, they do it kind of like tricky. So it's to prevent
It's like
fraud where it'll be like
yeah,
one
like the
number
street.
off.
Yeah, the
Yes,
street is
exactly.
correct, but the number's wrong.
Yes, yes. And I'm like, I've lived a lot of places. Like, I don't know, So it's like getting locked out. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it also for trans people who've changed their names,
absolutely.
this is also going to be a huge problem. So I just want to talk a little bit about how difficult it is, because this is the thing that I think that a lot of people don't understand. It's like, well, whatever, just get your birth certificate or just get a passport. Well, okay, so a passport book costs $165. So that's like the one with the pages, right? And then even a passport card is $65 for
Mhm.
somebody to get. And not only that, you can't get you have to submit your birth certificate to get your passport.
Mm.
So you have to apply for a birth certificate first, which in Louisiana, if you order one from the state office of vital records, it's $15. But if you go to the parish clerk of court office, it could be around $34, and it could take 8 to 10 weeks just to get the birth certificate.
Yeah.
And then you have to use that to apply for your passport, which is going to be another God knows how
It
long, you
takes a
know?
long time. I mean, I luckily have had a passport since I was a kid, so I don't have to deal with that. They're good for 10 years, but so this past year and then 10 years before that, I had to do that. In New Orleans, New Orleans luckily has like an in-person consulate here. Most places don't, where you can go in person. And so you can pay more to get it done really quickly in person, but it has to be like you have to be flying somewhere, you show them proof of it that you need it like, basically immediately. Otherwise, you have to mail it in. Like it takes a long time, like
Yeah.
6 weeks, 10 weeks. I don't remember, but, and as of now, at least maybe that they would set up a process that you could do the expedited way, which also then costs more, but that you could do it that way if you needed to vote or register to vote, as opposed to because you had proof to show them that you had a flight out of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you change the law so that all of a sudden tens of millions of people need to apply for a passport pretty quickly because they want to
Yeah.
vote in an upcoming election, that is going to create a huge backlog
Or even,
for
again, just to renew it. I mean, I don't know what the bill says. If you could use an expired passport, that would be nice. Probably
probably
not.
not.
Probably not. Exactly. Like my passport had been expired for maybe a year.
Yeah.
Like there's just times that I'm leaving the country a bunch and there's times that I'm not. So, a lot of people maybe would have that like, okay, well, I have this, but oh, wait, it's
Yeah.
not going to be good enough.
I
So,
just got my
yeah.
passport renewed right before the last election, federal election, because I was like, I mean, if Trump gets elected, I need to be ready to like get the fuck, if necessary.
Well, that's actually about when I got mine renewed. It was also in November, but that's because I was going out of the country for Thanksgiving. But yeah,
Yeah.
it also seemed like, well,
Yeah.
need to be able
I
to
mean,
get out of here if
seriously,
yeah.
I'm not going to be one of the like, Jews in like 41 in Germany that were like, oh, well, maybe we should have left in, 35.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
I know, which I mean is true for people, just everyone should remember it's not a bad idea to have this kind of documentation. I still don't have a real ID though. Like I haven't bothered. I mean, it's not that I haven't bothered. I was going to do it and then I was busy and then it was like up close to the time and by then I had a new passport. So you can use that now to fly instead of having the real ID. But all of these things they're a pain. They take time, they're expensive, it's
Yeah.
bureaucratic. There's reasons that people need documentation. I get that, and valid documentation, but layering that on top of it. But with voting, people are used to whatever they're used to in their state.
Right.
Either you show up with a basic state ID or you don't need anything and you just show up and you attest to the fact you sign, it's me, I'm here to vote.
The other thing that I think is problematic about the proof of citizenship to register is that, like, I don't know how you would implement like online voter registration or mail-in voter registration or voter registration drives that like, the little League of Women
Hmm.
Voters, like the
Right.
old biddies sitting at the
No Kings
local,
rallies,
yeah, at
for
the No
example.
Kings
Like, yeah.
rallies. Yeah. Or, the public library that are there registering people to vote. They're going to have to check to see if people, you know, anyway, it's
No,
just,
they could help people maybe like start navigating the process of like getting a passport and
oh,
stuff like that.
100%.
But it's like so many steps. It'll be so many steps. Yeah.
I'm going to look and see if there are organizations that are like fundraising to help people pay and
Mm.
assist people in getting documents like this. Louisiana actually passed a bill like 2 years ago in 2024 that also requires people prove their citizenship when registering to vote. And I guess the bill took effect January 1st, 2025, but it's being challenged, and the state has not actually really implemented it. They haven't put out any kind of rules about what documents would be acceptable or how people are supposed to submit them. So it's in effect, but it's not really in effect. But at some point,
Right.
the legal issue will be resolved and something is going to happen with this
Yeah. And I think that one does not require proof of citizenship at the polls, also, right? It's just for people newly
to
registered, which I mean,
register.
again, is a problem. But
Right.
the dual nature of this, I think, also is what is going to create just widespread confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
Um,
hate it, and I thought we should talk about
well,
it.
so yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of why I haven't been overly worried about it, and we'll see, I guess, is that I don't think it's going to pass. It's already passed in the House. Most people have assumed that it won't pass the Senate because, like, to pass as a standalone bill in the Senate, it needs 60 votes. So to get it passed, they would have to get rid of the filibuster.
Which Trump has
And
asked them to do for
correct.
this.
Yes. But that's right. But the Senate, including John Thune, doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster. But because that's probably not going to happen now, what they're trying to do, I think this is Mike Johnson's big plan, is to put the SAVE Act in the budget reconciliation bill. So this is like ICE, is all kinds of bad shit that people don't like. ICE funding without any reforms. I mean, other funding for the Department of Homeland Security that is not controversial, but that is being held up because of the lack of willingness to make any reforms to fund ICE. That, and they're going to add the SAVE Act into it and try to do that through reconciliation, which then only requires a majority vote, I think, in both chambers. And I think
Yeah.
they can do it on an up and down, just like not even a roll call vote. From what I know, then I think there's some real questions about whether they can do that through reconciliation. Like, there's a whole lot of, this is sort of in the weeds, but it's important with like, and it's not, and it's outside of my wheelhouse, probably yours too, but just generally for people, then, because it's like a specific procedural way to do things that requires less process, basically, then there's only certain kinds of things that you can do this way. And it really is budget related stuff. It's not policy. It's like you can't do something that is a policy thing through reconciliation. And this is obviously a policy thing. So the parliamentarian usually strips that kind of stuff out. And this, like, that it cuts both ways in a bipartisan way. Like, one party is trying to push and slip it in through reconciliation. And the parliamentarian is like, no, that's not happening. So I'm assuming that is to come with this, that at least most of it, if not all of it, the parliamentarian's going to say, you can't do that. But I don't know. That's all sort of, I think the last time that the Republicans got into a bind with the parliamentarian, then there was talk that they were going to just replace her too, which, like, anyone who has the job is supposed to be following the rules of the job. But it's the same with what they've tried to do with elections in general, right? Just like, well, if the person in XYZ state, at this county or statewide is like enforcing the law, in a way that they don't like because, they're enforcing the law, then there's just efforts to like, well, let's just put a new person in.
Yeah.
So I don't know
Someone
what
that
sort of
will do.
shenanigans, or if this is just like a vain and useless effort to then be like, we tried. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I do know that people should call their representatives and their senators. This is not state. These are your U.S.
Yes,
representatives and U.S. senators, and say that this SAVE Act is not good and they should not support it, regardless of
absolutely.
in what format it.
That's right. Yeah. Regardless of how sneaky you try to do it, yeah, don't do it.
Yeah.
And in Louisiana in particular, there's already a lot of confusion about upcoming elections, in particular for our Senate, for Cassidy's seat.
Yeah.
So it's an open primary now. Or no, it's a closed
Closed.
primary now.
Closed.
Yeah, see, it's gonna be so it used to always be an open primary. Now it's a closed primary, so meaning you can only vote in the Republican one or the Democratic one. But if you're a registered no party, then you have to pick one or the other. And I've been in a couple of meetings recently where there's been all kinds of questions about this. People don't really know when they have to change their affiliation, which primary then they can vote in, how that's going to work. And it's basically going to work the way I just said. I don't know the deadline you have to, if you're going to change your registration, when that is,
Okay.
but like that, the basics of it are that in the primary, you can vote. If you're already registered Democrat, you just vote in the Democrat. If you're already registered Republican, you just vote in the Republican one. If you're registered, quote, no party, which is what anyone who was an independent or anyone who wasn't a Republican or a Democrat has now been automatically switched to, quote, no party. Or you can affirmatively register yourself as no party.
Mm.
And then you choose. So in other words, it's not just, so if you previously you were registered as an independent or like the Green Party or like the eat shit everybody party, whatever, like just whatever sort of just another party, you're now no party for purposes of the primary, or you can register yourself that way. And so then for the primary, you cannot vote in both. You can pick. You have to pick one, the Republican primary or the Democratic primary. So there's some gamesmanship that people, it's not gamesmanship, but like how best to make your vote effective, whether you
Yeah.
vote in the Republican primary or the Democratic primary. That's for people to decide. And then, of course, once that's done and there's a candidate from the Democratic primary and from the Republican primary, then in the general election, none of this matters again, and you can just vote, regardless of how you're registered. And if you've decided you wanted to switch parties or switch to no party, you can change back later. But so the point being, there's already a lot of confusion about that. And they've moved the dates
Yeah.
of that election and others because of the uncertainty with what's going to happen with the Voting Rights Act and the Supreme Court. So there's a lot going on with Louisiana already. And so people should definitely be calling and telling Congress, including fucking Mike Johnson, he's from here, and fucking Steve Scalise, who's the number 2 in charge there and is from here, that like there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty already across the partisan landscape. This is not that affects just Democrats. It affects everybody. So like what we definitely don't need is one more thing for people to be figuring out last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so May 16th is the party primary election. So this is for U.S. Senate, U.S. Representative, also Supreme Court Justice, the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, I think 1 or 2 members, some members of the Public Service Commission.
Some important judicial elections that day, at least in Orleans Parish, I know.
Yeah.
So there's other stuff on the ballot depending on where you are. That is important. Yeah.
Yes. The closed primary only applies to kind of some state and federal elections, not necessarily your local elections.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also confusing. But anyway, the deadline to register to vote in person, by mail, or at an like a Office of Motor Vehicles location is April 15th. And then the deadline to register to vote through the online voter registration system is April 25th. So just
That's
so folks
soon.
know, we'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, but yeah, it is soon. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's talk about Baby Olivia.
Yeah. People will remember maybe from last year, you did a rant and you did a deep dive on the Baby Olivia bills that have been introduced other places that we had not yet seen in Louisiana, and we did not see last session. So why don't you give people like a little refresher on what the Baby Olivia bills are and what has transpired in the past week or so on that front in Louisiana?
I have a video that Jessica Valenti put together that I think is a really good explainer. So maybe we should just let her explain what the Baby Olivia bills are.
Sounds good.
When parents send their kids to school, they expect them to learn about math, reading, science, not anti-abortion propaganda. But that's exactly what children will be getting across the country when they go into classrooms this year, and that's all thanks to Baby Olivia. I'm Jessica Valenti, and this is Anti-Abortion Glossary. Baby Olivia isn't a real baby. It's a computer-animated fetus in a video produced by Live Action, one of the most extreme anti-abortion organizations in the country. This is a group that says abortion and IVF are murder, that doesn't believe in birth control, and that regularly peddles in disinformation. And now those same people are going to be teaching millions of school children about pregnancy and when life begins. Baby Olivia started as a social media video in 2021. It's designed to look like it's an actual ultrasound, even though it's animated. It's one of those things that you might see your crazy uncle share on Facebook, and once it gained traction, Live Action decided to make it into a legislative project. Baby Olivia bills have been introduced in over 20 states and have passed in 6. They require public schools to show the video in health or science class to disguise anti-abortion propaganda as a scientific lesson on fetal development. But there's nothing scientific about Baby Olivia. It presents religious ideas as fact, like the idea that life begins at conception. It's riddled with lies about fetal development, depicting it as far more advanced than it actually is. What might be most confusing for children, though, is that it's designed to look like footage of an actual ultrasound. It's presented like it's a documentary, complete with a British narrator.
At 27 weeks, her eyes are responding to light. She can recognize her parents' voices and will even recognize lullabies and stories.
And while Live Action says that the video's been reviewed and certified by leading medical experts, they're actually just anti-abortion organizations. These extremists are smart, though. They know that some parents are not going to want to have their kids watching this nonsense. And so Republicans are framing the video as a health or science lesson, because parents can opt their kids out of sex education. It's not so easy to opt your kid out of science class. And if you're an educator who doesn't want to teach anti-abortion lies, some of these bills allow the state attorney general to go after public schools or public school districts that decline to show Baby Olivia. This isn't just about one video or one lesson. Baby Olivia is part of a broader push to indoctrinate young Americans. They know that young people are the most pro-choice demographic right now, and they know that the more people know about pregnancy, the more likely they are to be pro-choice. So the anti-abortion movement is doing everything that they can to stop that from happening, and they're hoping that Baby Olivia will help.
Yeah, that's very, very good. And yeah, like hits on a lot of things that we talked about last year about like it's animated, it's it's an animation. There's nothing about it that's real, and it's based on fallacies about fetal development and how developed it is, and basically trying to make it seem like there's a live baby inside of every person from conception, which, as everyone on the show has heard, is one of the things that drives me insane, but is like the through line with their sort of propaganda. And now they're making it into basically a cartoon that looks like real life to make all of our kids have to watch in science class.
Yes. So most of the bills that have been introduced in other states either say like, this is the Baby Olivia Act, or it's very explicit about requiring public schools to show this video. That's a little bit different than what's been introduced here. So the bill here is House Concurrent Resolution 26. It's by Representative Chenevert, who also wants to make sure that your kids cannot get any sort of medical care or mental health treatment without your consent, even if they break their arm spending the night at a friend's house.
Or even if you're in jail and they need, mental health or substance abuse counseling. Yeah.
Correct. So the resolution requests Louisiana's Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, which we refer to here as BESSY, to include instruction on human development, including visual depictions of prenatal development beginning at fertilization and continuing through pregnancy in science or health courses. So this resolution is not explicitly a Baby Olivia bill, but it operates the exact same way because obviously it has the same exact policy goal, and it also encourages that instruction to include a high definition animated video that shows this, da 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 da. Like it's not saying you should show this video, but it's essentially saying this is the video.
Does it say, like with the Signs of Hope bill, does it say that like that schools should get this from a designated organization or something along those lines?
No, which is interesting because the other Baby Olivia bills in other states do say,
Mhm.
like, it'll say you should show a 3-minute video
Mhm.
showing
Mhm.
human development, such as, or the school board should consider showing this film that meets all of those criteria. This one just lays out the criteria.
I mean, I've not, this is the first I've thought about this, like whether it could be done that it would meet these parameters, but I mean, some real doctors maybe should consider putting together, like a quote animated video that is actually scientifically accurate along these lines. Because I assume that now one of the one of their presumptions is, and this is just a resolution, it's not a bill, so it wouldn't at least initially have the force of law. It's like schools should do this. Schools should start doing this. Bessie should start saying that schools have to put this in their curriculum. But it seems to us to be sort of a step one before trying to push a bill that would have the force of law. But by sort of making it less clear, it's, I think, one, obviously to try to draw less attention to it and hope it slips by and isn't as controversial.
Yep.
But also that then, like, if Bessie or whomever is trying to do this, that probably right now there's only one thing out there that meets those criteria. So I don't know. ACOG, if you're listening, maybe make a real Baby Olivia video.
Maybe not call it Baby Olivia
I
or
know,
not even name it.
obviously.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, that, right, because that's part of what is, yeah. So the personification part is part of the point. But I mean, something that an animated version of fetal development that was actually accurate,
Yeah.
that's just an updated way of teaching science then,
Yeah.
right? If it's
Yeah.
not propaganda, it's just, the same way we all were taught science, but just with a visual element to it. So yeah, so maybe people should consider there being like a product that people can point to
That
that
isn't,
like is accurate
yeah, that's
and
not
not
misleading.
propaganda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, the other thing to think about is just, again, Louisiana schools don't mandate that comprehensive, evidence-based sex education be taught, right? So these, materials and these videos, they would be presented without any sort of other context. And then the other thing that I think is insane about them is,
But you mean no context, meaning that like your science teachers, I guess, is probably teaching some level of human development. I
right,
mean, we learned that in science, in addition to like sex ed and health.
Mhm.
Kids are learning like how a sperm and an egg, how they combine, and then how the embryo develops into a fetus and yada yada. But people just aren't learning, how would that happen to begin with, that a sperm and an egg were combining? Like,
Exactly.
ta-da! How does that happen on the front end?
You have no idea what happened on the front end. And then it also, it just like completely ignores the fact that not every single embryo develops into a fetus
Oh,
and
absolutely.
then develops into a viable. Yeah, exactly. Like, so anyway, that's ridiculous. The fetus with the British accent overlay. I mean, Jessica is 100% right that this is
Yes.
about shaping culture. It's about like targeting kids. It's about indoctrinating the next generation and manipulating their feelings about abortion.
Yes.
And like to do that through the public school curriculum is just, it's fucking insane to me.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And again, like in a way that's not medically accurate. Folks on the other side know that young people in general are the most pro-choice. What they also know is kids, though, kids are susceptible to, like, they don't know. You see your mom pregnant, you're excited. Being told you're gonna have a brother and sister. Sometimes then you're told at some point that like didn't work out. Mom's not gonna have a brother or sister right now. Like, you just don't really know what's going on because you're a kid and you're not supposed to really understand. And your parents are supposed to be able to be the ones who explain that kind of stuff to you, however they think is best for you to understand it.
Right.
But it's like they're talking about like 7th grade. They're talking about pretty young kids. I think actually in the bills that I think it's even maybe much younger kids too, like maybe 2nd grade to like
This
7th
resolution
graders.
just says age appropriate. It doesn't even say, I mean, they could start showing this to kids in kindergarten, I guess,
Yeah,
if
I
they think it's
remember.
age appropriate.
Yeah, I remember there with looking at this in with the other state ones. Then it's young. It's not high school. It's like I mean, we learned this part of actual science when I was in 7th grade. So it's really an effort to like just really for propaganda to basically make kids, not teenagers, not young people, kids believe that in so and so's womb is basically just a little version of you the whole time that has thoughts and feelings and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's the target. The target audience is children.
Yes.
It's not young people. And that's where the propaganda really comes into play, in my opinion.
And the video also, there's literally like no mention of the mother. All of this is happening just in some sort of incubator.
Because no one cares. That's my point. That's about like trying to divorce all of this from context, right?
Yeah.
About like a real family, a real person's life, real health issues that could develop along the way for either fetus or mom, right? And just get kids invested in, there's a baby. This is a baby.
Yes. A full-size baby.
The whole time. The whole time. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Inside of everybody is basically something that looks like the doll you have.
Right.
Looks like the doll you have.
Baby alive or whatever that baby was. Yeah. This is just, it's of a piece of what they're trying to do, putting up the signs, getting young people to go to these pregnancy centers so they can get indoctrinated by these anti-abortion messages. And this is why they're hanging the 10 Commandments in schools. Like, this is a very specific agenda that is being operationalized in a bunch of different ways. But it's all targeted at young people in public schools are sitting ducks.
That's right.
Because the legislature can throw all kinds of mandates on them because
that's right.
They're publicly funded.
Yeah, I was saying with the signs that it's like shooting fish in a barrel from their perspective. And this really is with like even much younger children. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a target audience. Yeah. Who can do nothing about it. What's the number of that resolution?
It's HCR 26.
Okay, so that's House Concurrent Resolution 26.
Yes.
So people need to be on the lookout for that. We'll try to let people know. But because it's a resolution, they move quickly. They do still have to be heard in committee, and then but it's usually quick, and then it's very quick when they're on the floor. So I would suggest to people who don't like the sound of this to go ahead and start. This should go to health and welfare. I'm assuming that's where it's been sent.
No, it'll be in education because it's a school regulation.
So that's starting in the House. So start sending emails to the House Education Committee or just to the full House, either way, because it'll come about pretty quickly and telling people the problems that you have with this. Because again, this version of it seems like it's like a test run, like a trial balloon, something like that they decided for whatever reason not to do it this year as a bill that would have the force of law, and instead as like Bessie should be doing this. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
An urgent request, as Senator or as Rep. Cruz says. I know we've made this joke before, but just so people know, the language of these things say that we are urging and requesting. It's an urge and request. And dipshit Cruz thinks it's an urgent request. I did just spit on myself. I told you I was going to at some point. So you should urgently request
that they not move this bill forward.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Correct.
This resolution. So at least the one good thing that could come out of it is legislators seeing that this is not popular and that people have got some real problems with it. That's the one good thing that could come out of it, so that it makes it seem like it's going to be hard for them to get this through with the force of law. That's what we can do about this now.
Yeah, absolutely. That House committee is tough, though. So it's
not as bad as it used to be. Not as bad as it used to be.
No, I mean the education committee.
I know. It's not as bad as it used to be.
Okay.
but you know how that goes.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, let's tell people what is on the agenda for next week. So on Monday, House Bill 485, this is the constitutional amendment giving parents complete and total rights and blocking the states from intervening in any way that restricts parents' rights, including in situations of neglect, abuse, etc. Correct. So that is scheduled for the House Civil Law Committee on Monday. So this podcast, it will already have been heard by the time this podcast goes live, sadly, but we'll talk about it on next week's, I'm sure.
We told you guys last week, and Lyft has sent out action alerts on the privacy bill, the one that would require pregnancy resource centers to like do something that's like vaguely and remotely close to HIPAA protections, but way less burdensome. Just the most simple, common sense privacy protections for people's personally identifiable health data. So send emails to the House Health and Welfare Committee about that bill. If it's not scheduled this week, it'll be scheduled soon. So just go ahead and send them, or keep sending them. And then Rep. Landry's bill on prohibiting like explicitly religious materials to be, or there being a condition on folks for being able to get services from those centers, that they have to participate in curricula and programs that have explicitly religious criteria or religious programming, saying that the state basically can't condition services, like publicly funded services, on participation in a certain religious activity. So again, pretty simple, really. And like there's lots of protections in the law for things like that, because it amounts to religious discrimination. It's viewpoint discrimination.
Yes.
The first Landry bill is HB 897. The second one is HB 931. Then I think the only other one that's like, this is SB 310. So this is the Signs of Hope bill in the Senate. It made it out of committee. So it's been sort of hanging out there for the full Senate because of just the process right now that people can object to a bill when it comes up. And so then it gets pushed. So that's good for us. It gives people time to send senators, young people, please, please, please tell your senators how you feel about that bill. There being more time with all of these bills is good for us, whether it's ones we're opposing or ones that we are supporting. It gives people time to be able to call, email, by whatever means necessary, to let their elected officials know how they feel about these bills.
One more, actually, that is going to be also in health and welfare on Wednesday is House Bill 288, which is the bill that requires miscarriage to be added in parentheses in all medical documentation anytime spontaneous abortion is included as a diagnosis or whatever. So we talked about that bill in our legislative preview. Folks can go back and listen to the details on all the things that are wrong with that bill, but that is also going to be in health and welfare on Wednesday. Okay. Well, we got through it.
I know.
Next week's episode might be significantly longer because we will have more hearings, and, we like to play you what the people are saying during the hearings. So we'll have lots of that to share with you. But
yeah, I think that's inevitable at this point. Yeah. So that's something to look forward to. I mean, it's something for me to dread while having to actually be there in person or watching live for this. But it's always a good time then for us to be able to do a little recap with a cocktail over the weekend.
Absolutely. All right. Well, until then, Ellie, what are the people supposed to do?
You're supposed to be rating, reviewing, and subscribing, and mostly the subscribing. Subscribe to the podcast. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us to boost the podcast up in the rankings so that more people can find it and more people can hear our awesome information and important views on the world, on the world of needing more non-religious traditions for holidays, the SAVE Act, bills at the legislature, the whole full gamut of useful and hilarious information that Michelle and I have to share, as you listeners have come to know.
Indeed. Okay. Well, thanks, Ellie, and thanks to all of you, and we will talk to you next week.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Seriously is presented by Lift Louisiana, a nonprofit organization advocating for reproductive health rights and justice.